She posted a normal selfie. 24 hours later she was missing. Before the story gets any darker, subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments what you think really happened, because once you see where this goes, you won't forget it. The selfie went up just after sunset. Soft lighting. A casual smile. Nothing staged. Nothing alarming. The kind of photo that disappears into endless scrolling within seconds. Friends liked it. A few commented with hearts. Someone joked about her hair. Another asked where she was heading next. It was normal. Completely normal. And that's what made everything that followed so terrifying. 24 hours later, she was missing. Her name was Lena Carter, 19 years old, artistic, quiet in person but expressive online. Her social media told a familiar story: selfies in bedroom mirrors, photos of half-finished sketches, late-night captions about feeling misunderstood. To anyone watching from the outside, she looked like millions of other young women navigating life through a glowing screen. But beneath that digital calm, something had already begun to unravel. The last place Lena had been seen was a small gathering on the edge of town, a modest house where people came and went without much notice. It wasn't a party in the traditional sense. No loud music. No crowds. Just a few people who knew each other well enough not to ask questions. Witnesses later said Lena seemed fine. Quiet, maybe a little distant, but not scared. Not upset. She laughed once. Checked her phone often. Sent messages to someone no one else could see. Sometime after midnight, she left. By morning, her phone stopped responding. At first, no one panicked. She was an adult. She'd gone offline before. But as hours passed, concern turned into something heavier. Messages went unread. Calls rang out into silence. Her location, usually active, froze in place, like time itself had stalled. By the evening, police were notified. Detectives began where modern investigations always do: her digital footprint. Her accounts were still visible. The selfie was still there, untouched. The comments beneath it had started to change. Confusion replaced emojis. Questions stacked on top of each other. Has anyone heard from her? Is she okay? Please tell me this is a joke. Investigators noticed something else. Shortly after the selfie was posted, Lena's online activity spiked. Messages sent. Photos viewed. Someone had been watching her closely. Liking old posts. Commenting in patterns that suggested obsession, not admiration. One name appeared again and again. Evan. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone she trusted, or thought she could. Someone who had been present in her life quietly, consistently, slipping into her routines without ever standing fully in the light. Friends described him as intense. Always around. Always attentive. The kind of attention that feels flattering, until it doesn't. When detectives reached out to Evan, he answered immediately. He said he'd last seen Lena the night before. Said she was fine. Said she'd left on her own. Said he didn't know where she went after. His voice was calm. Cooperative. Almost rehearsed. But his online behavior told a different story. In the hours after Lena vanished, Evan's accounts went silent. Posts deleted. Messages wiped. Entire threads gone. It was as if someone had reached backward through time, trying to erase digital fingerprints before anyone noticed they were there. Investigators obtained search warrants. What they found wasn't illegal, but it was unsettling. Saved photos. Screenshots. Archived posts dating back months. Notes written late at night, filled with fixation and resentment. The language wasn't violent, but it was possessive. The kind of words that blur the line between affection and control. Meanwhile, the search for Lena intensified. Her last known location was traced to a wooded area outside the city. Quiet, rarely visited, easy to overlook. Officers combed through trails as night fell, flashlights cutting through trees, calling her name into the dark. They found her bag first. Then her phone. Damaged. Silent. Face down in the dirt. Back at headquarters, the mood shifted. This was no longer a missing person case drifting toward hope. This was something else. Something deliberate. When detectives finally brought Evan in for a formal interview, they placed one item on the table between them, a printed screenshot. It was the selfie. But beneath it, Hidden in metadata most people never think about, was a location tag Lena didn't realize she'd shared. Evan stared at it longer than necessary. And in that moment, investigators understood something chilling. Lena hadn't just posted a photo. She had unknowingly told the wrong person exactly where to find her. Because when they followed that digital trail to its end, what they uncovered would turn a normal selfie into the beginning of a nightmare no one could undo. The woods felt different after dark. What looked harmless in daylight became disorienting at night. Trees closing in, shadows bending at strange angles, every sound amplified. Search teams moved slowly, marking the ground with flags, documenting every footprint, every broken branch. The air was heavy with the sense that time mattered more than ever. Lena's phone was rushed to forensic analysts. It was damaged but not destroyed. And that mattered. Investigators reconstructed her final hours minute by minute. Messages sent. Messages read. Gaps where replies should have been. The pattern told a quiet story, one of reassurance turning into unease. Lena had been communicating with someone she believed she could trust. Someone who kept asking where she was, who she was with, when she'd be alone. That someone was Evan. Detectives pulled his phone records. He had been moving while Lena was still messaging. His location data overlapped with hers in ways that were impossible to explain as coincidence. He claimed he went straight home that night. The data disagreed. When confronted, Evan adjusted his story. He said he drove around to clear his head. Said he didn't remember exact times. Said stress made things blurry. His words spilled faster now, layered with explanations no one had asked for. Investigators noticed something else. Evan hadn't just followed Lena online, he studied her. He knew her routines. Which bus she took. Which park she liked to sit in. Which coffee shop she tagged most often. Her digital life had become a map, and Evan had memorized it. Meanwhile, Lena's friends were being interviewed. They described moments that made sense only in hindsight. How Lena had grown uneasy. How she'd mentioned someone who watched too closely. How she'd joked about feeling followed, then laughed it off like she didn't want to seem dramatic. One friend mentioned a message Lena sent weeks earlier. He says he knows me better than I know myself. At the time, it sounded romantic. Now, it felt like a warning. As pressure mounted, Evan's behavior began to crack. He stopped answering calls. Missed a scheduled interview. Then failed to show up entirely. Detectives went to his apartment. It was empty. His car was gone. His landlord said he'd packed hastily. Left items behind. Didn't explain. Just said he needed to get away for a bit. An alert went out. This was no longer about questioning a person of interest. This was a search. Late that night, a patrol officer spotted Evan's car parked near an abandoned structure on the outskirts of town. The engine was cold. No lights. No movement. Inside, officers found his phone, wiped clean. Factory reset. No messages. No photos. No history. It was an admission without words. Search teams expanded outward from that location. Helicopters circled. K-9 units tracked scent paths that led deeper into the wooded area, toward places where cell signals died and help felt far away. Then, just before dawn, a call came through. Something had been found. Not a body, but evidence. Personal items. Recognizable. Undeniable. The mood at command shifted from urgency to dread. Investigators knew what this usually meant. They also knew they couldn't stop. Not now, not this close. At the same time, digital analysts made a breakthrough. Before Evan wiped his phone, a single data fragment survived. A draft message never sent. Written late at night. Long rambling. Conflicted. It spoke of rejection. Of entitlement. Of the belief that if he couldn't have Lena's attention, no one should. It ended with a sentence that made the room go silent. If I can't exist in her world, then neither can she. As officers closed in on the final search area, another update came in. Evan had been spotted. Alive. Standing at the edge of the woods, disoriented, clothes stained with dirt, eyes hollow. He didn't run. Didn't resist. Just stood there as officers approached, hands shaking, lips moving silently as if rehearsing words he knew wouldn't save him. Back at headquarters, investigators prepared for the confrontation. They had the digital trail, the location data, the witness statements, the evidence found in the woods. And now, they had Evan. But one critical question remained unanswered. Where was Lena? Because until she was found, the truth was still incomplete. And as dawn broke over the trees where the search had begun, detectives braced themselves for what the final discovery would confirm. That a normal selfie hadn't just documented a moment in time. It had marked the last moment Lena was truly free. The search ended just after sunrise. A break in the tree line revealed a clearing most people never noticed. Hidden by brush, untouched by trails, quiet enough that sound seemed to disappear into the ground. Officers moved carefully, instinctively, as if the place itself demanded silence. They found Lena there. Not in the way movies portray. No drama. No chaos. Just stillness. A stillness so complete it felt unreal. The world continued around her, birds calling, leaves shifting, but her story had stopped. When the confirmation came through, the investigation snapped into focus. What had felt like fragments scattered across phones, screens, and timelines finally aligned into something whole and devastating. Evan broke during the second interrogation. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He unraveled. He spoke about loneliness the way others talk about weather, constant, unavoidable. He described discovering Lena online and feeling seen for the first time. How every like felt personal. How every post felt like an invitation. How her silence, missed replies, delayed responses, felt like betrayal. He said he never planned to become invisible in her life. Only to become permanent. Detectives listened without interruption. They had heard variations of this before, but the details were always unique, shaped by obsession and entitlement disguised as affection. Evan spoke of control without naming it. Of love without understanding it. Of a world where rejection felt like erasure. He admitted following her that night. Admitted waiting. Admitted confronting her in a place she never expected to see him. The rest came out in pieces. Enough to tell the truth without sensationalism. Enough to explain how trust was used as access, and access became opportunity. When the case went public, the reaction was immediate and global. People recognized Lena. Not her name, but her presence. They saw themselves in her posts. Their sisters. Their daughters. Their friends. The comments beneath her last selfie multiplied by the thousands, then the millions. The same image that once blended into a feed now stood as a memorial frozen in time. Investigators released details carefully. They spoke about digital footprints. About how location data, metadata, and online patterns reconstructed what witnesses never could. They emphasized a truth many didn't want to hear. The crime didn't begin in the woods. It began with watching. In court, Evan avoided eye contact. His online history was displayed screen by screen. Messages. Saved images. Deleted drafts. Patterns no one noticed until it was too late. The jury didn't take long. The sentence was final. But justice felt incomplete to those who followed the case closely. Because while the legal system closed its file, the questions lingered in everyday life. How many people were watching silently? How many posts shared more than intended? How many harmless followers weren't harmless at all? Lena's family chose to speak publicly, not about how she died, but about how she lived. About her art, her humor, her plans. They urged others to understand that danger doesn't always arrive violently. Sometimes it arrives politely, patiently, one notification at a time. Years later, the selfie still exists. It's archived, screenshotted, studied. People notice details now they never saw before. The background, the lighting, the expression that looks casual until you realize it was the last moment she controlled how the world saw her. Investigators would later admit something unsettling. If Lena hadn't posted that photo, if she hadn't shared that moment, the case might have taken longer. Evidence might have vanished. The truth might have stayed hidden. The same digital world that exposed her also ensured she wasn't forgotten. And that's the paradox that haunts this story. Technology didn't create the obsession. It revealed it. Today, Lena's case is cited in training rooms and documentaries, not as a cautionary tale about posting online, but as a warning about what happens when attention turns into entitlement and silence is mistaken for permission. Because the most dangerous thing Evan believed wasn't that he loved her. It was that he deserved her. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you think twice about what feels normal online, then you understand why these stories matter. If you think this one was intense, you're not ready for the next. Subscribe, because some crimes don't start with violence, they start with a follow.